Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Houselights for the last room in the House of Kurosawa as we've been examining the films of Akira Kurosawa, legendary Japanese director, here on Houselights. We are examining Kagemusha, the acclaimed 1980 film from Akira Kurosawa to close out this series of rooms in the House of Kurosawa. I am one of your hosts, soon-to-be-dead General John Mills, and joining me is my very much friendlier, more reasonable, and more loving double, Darren Moser. Darren, welcome to the final house in the House of Kurosawa. We are one person light this evening because, you know what? I messed up that opening, I guess. He should be the dead general, and I'm the imposter, and then you're the very, very
He's
angry.
in the jar.
Yeah,
Tristan is in the jar.
You're right. There we go. Scratch all that. Tristan's in the jar. I'm the imposter, and Darren is the puppet master pulling my strings that you all can see, and we're just having a time about it. Of course, reach out to thenerdparty.com/contact if you have any directors in mind that you would like us to talk about as we close out the House of Kurosawa here. So let's jump right in, Darren. Here we are. This is a movie both of us have not seen. This is a Kurosawa classic. This was a co-winner for the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival in 1980. So it's a beloved film. It has an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a very critically regarded film. It has a Criterion Collection release. But the core question every time we study one of these films is, did you even know this film existed before we decided to do House of Kurosawa?
Unfortunately, like many of the Kurosawa movies we've covered, I did not. And it obviously, just from looking at the poster, obviously a period piece set in the 1570s, those roaring 70s.
Yes.
from way back when.
Yes.
But it is, at its core though, at first I thought we were going the Prince and Pauper route, where someone steps in to fill the role. But this is much more of the I'm clutching at power manipulation. It's more of a Dave situation.
Yes. I thought of the same thing. The film Dave, starring Kevin Kline, where he steps in as he's a dead ringer for the president, and he steps in when the president has, I think it's a stroke or something like that.
Yeah.
And
he's
so
medically incapacitated.
Yeah. And so to keep the illusion up, he steps in, but then he winds up getting a little big for his britches, and it angers his power brokers in the background and everything like that. But one of them played by a deliciously evil Frank Langella, as I recall. So, okay. So
nothing going in.
Nothing.
It was
nothing.
It was like, hey, color. Here we go. I'm going to enjoy this.
Well, the thing is, I'm surprised we had never heard of this, because through this whole thing, we've been talking about how Kurosawa was such an influence on Western films and on one filmmaker in particular who cites him all the time, George Lucas. And, Lucas and Coppola actually stepped in to get this film across the line because Toho, it seems that a consistent thread with all of these films. I don't know if I would ever want to work with Toho Studios because they seem to have problems financing films to the final frame. But Coppola and Lucas famously step in to help their revered film hero get this across the line. And what I want to ask actually is sort of an unorthodox question, but with that in mind, do you see anything that indicates to you that Lucas or Coppola were more active than just funding? Does this carry any air of like, oh, I could see maybe a little bit of the producer standing on the side, talking with the director?
I don't think so. It seems like they were really just funding, especially that end fight, which also was very much I don't want to say show don't tell, but like you don't see a lot and then you just see the aftermath.
Yeah.
Of the big end fight, but it still has a lot of people involved. So, or maybe they just cycled through the same 3 divisions and changed the color of their banners. Who's to know?
Yeah,
but
right.
It's interesting. This is such a cool part of film history because imagine you're Lucas and you hit it big in the 70s. Just a few years before this. You're now a household name. Your movie is the biggest movie ever in 77, and you find a way to connect with, your film mentor inspiration and help him with one of his movies being in that right place, right time. I look at it as like, okay, if I hit it big and then I'm trying to help, George Lucas on his, of course I'm not giving him notes. I'm just giving him money. So that's, I think, how I answer that.
But what's even more interesting to me is they're helping with the funding, and they have some sort of hand in it and devoting some sort of mental space to it. Lucas is making The Empire Strikes Back, and Coppola is just coming out of Apocalypse Now. So I mean, these are two guys that are they're fully engaged. Yeah, they're fully engaged in their projects, and it's wild to me. I mean, if anything, I think that speaks to a more collaborative spirit among the filmmaking, the up and coming or the breakthrough filmmakers of the 70s, is that they seem to be very collaborative. If they had so much as a dime or some time, they were going to help you out, whether it was with a rewrite or suggested edits and stuff like that. And it's like that collaborative spirit, I think, is probably why we got such a batch of interesting films. But for anybody else who hasn't seen this film, Kagemusha is the tale of it's basically like a historical fiction about a great general who's one of the warlords in feudal Japan, Shingen, and they decide to bring on a new double who's a dead ringer for him, and so that he can get a little more leeway. One thing leads to another. He actually dies, and basically to hold on to power, he tells everybody, don't tell anybody about my death for 3 years. His generals conspire, they agree to it, and they keep him in power, including one of the lords that's helping this happen is his son, who's not next in line for the warlord's throne, but his son is next in line. There's intrigue, there's concern about keeping up appearances, and along the way, the imposter starts to reshape the relationships that people had with Shingen because they don't know that he's not the real deal. So, like we were alluding to earlier, it's all somebody pretending to be somebody else sort of thing. But my question for you is, we watched two different cuts. You watched the 3-hour cut, which is I think the official cut, the Japanese international
probably the Criterion
cut.
one. Yeah.
And I watched the 2 hour and 40-minute-ish one that's regarded as the US release. And I know that even at the 2 hour, 40-minute mark, I was like, this is a little long. I got to know from you, like, that's something that you and Tristan and I have struggled with a little bit, is basically these films come together, they've got long run times. Did you have trouble getting into this? Did you manage to get into this? Was the narrative cohesive enough to justify the 3 hours? I mean, this is an award-winning film. So where did you land with that?
I was brought into the story. It was a very interesting story, and I felt engaged, but this movie could have been half the length, like easy. It just, every sequence was, and again, this is a modern sensibility. I totally get that. If I had the choice of watching the edited for TV version that is really about runtime, I'd probably enjoy it, because it's not that the movie's not there, and it's not that the movie doesn't come across. It just takes its sweet time. Like, every battle is a long battle. Every meeting is a long meeting. We talked about when we were starting the House of Kurosawa, that kind of inclination of showing, okay, if we're going to go over here, we're going to watch everybody go over here and travel and get there. And that is still, part of the filmmaking motif. So, but all that to say, this movie has an interesting story, is an amazing dual performance. I completely keep forgetting as I'm watching that the same actor is playing both roles of the general and the imposter, because for 79 technology, for 1980 technology, I never once thought, oh, is this a split screen? Is this however they did it? It was flawless. Like, I always thought it was the same. I always thought it was two people. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, wait, no, that would be the same person. So all that to say, yeah, story-wise, engaging, but I could have used no intermission. Just cut it down for run.
But see, that's sort of the question that I have is, I would argue actually that an intermission would help. And the thing is, they didn't shy away from intermissions in the past. I just watched Ben-Hur for the first time, and that's a long ass movie. And there's an intermission. And I remember when I went to see Kenneth Branagh's sterling adaptation of Hamlet in the 90s, there was an intermission because everybody balked at, oh, it's 4 hours runtime. I really think that it's weird that people shied away from intermissions but kept the long film. I think there's an obligation on the part of the filmmakers to build in an intermission. I think that the intermission dies specifically because of the fact that we go into the multiplex era, the as many showings as possible business model era, as opposed to the I'm going out for the evening, so I'm going to take the whole evening. So if it's a long movie, I know I'm going to get a 15-minute bathroom break. I mean,
and that's the interesting thing, because think about it. Okay, let's say intermissions become in vogue and in cinema, and they become a thing again. Why not? If you have a 3-hour plus movie and you have a 10, 12-minute, 15-minute intermission in the middle, people have already paid for their ticket. They're gonna come back. It's not like, oh, you're going to lose them at the commercial break if you have a break. It's like, no, I would be fine with that. As my daughter and my kids have started going to the movies more, and we just watched, Project Hail Mary, which is a longish movie. It's 240. She was like, oh, she honestly thinks that the normal runtime of a movie is 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of movies she's seen have been, more geared toward children. And I'm like, no, I would say the average is probably more two plus 120 minutes. So all that to say, I don't see why you wouldn't add in intermissions. But I did want to say, I feel the last remnant of the intermission in the modern era, and maybe there's something that counters this, is I feel like it was switching between the VHS tapes on Titanic and also putting in the second disc on the extended Lord of the Rings editions. Like, those are the most recent ones I can think of where you had a physical pause.
See, you didn't live through the Laserdisc era. And listen to this, Laserdisc fans. Laserdisc sucked, okay? Everybody listening to the sound of my voice, it sucked because you had to change the disc like every 20 minutes. No, bad.
It's like 4 discs and each one's double-sided.
Oh, no, 4 discs? Oh, no, my friend. It was more than that. But the thing is, I think that this movie would have benefited from an intermission because it's I would argue the style of it is very theatrical. And I mean that literally, like it's a stage play sort of setup. There's a very Shakespearean stage play sort of approach to this in the way that it's even staged, and in the personal scenes and stuff like that. Obviously, you can't stage horses on a beach or a giant battle like that on a stage. But it's one of those things where I think that both of us, our esteem for this film would have increased with an intermission. And I think it would have changed the way Kurosawa approached the editing of the film. And I think that it's one of those things where for me, it's a mental flip. But in terms of mental flip, I think that, and I want to get your take on this, the back half of the movie, I think, really clicks in terms of there's much more dream logic. It feels like it feels like and I've made this comment about previous films that we've talked about. It feels like the beginning part, I'm sort of struggling with it. I'm trying to get there. And then suddenly there's this magic moment. And it's usually about 1/3 to halfway through where suddenly it seems to flow. He's calmed down. He's figured it out. Did you get that same sort of sense? Did the dream logic work for you in the back half of the movie, or was it all a challenge?
No, I mean, are you talking about the specific dreams? Because there is the dream sequence.
Oh, no. When I say dream logic, I'm speaking very loosely because there's a lack, and in the cut that I watched, there's a lack of interstitial moments where it's like scene over, flip, and it's a different scene. And I'm very used to a more modern sensibility of I at least get a shot of like, okay, I close the door. I've given everybody the visual cue. Scene
instead of it kind of flowing, it's constantly flowing. Right. Yeah, I did. It kind of registered or didn't register for me as far as how much time was passing, because it starts in 71 and it ends in 75. And I think they had, a title card or two thrown up on the screen. But besides that, it was very difficult to tell. Because they kept saying, we're going to hold on for 3 years. And I'm like, and then 20 minutes later, it felt like it had been 3 days. And they're like, oh no, it's been a year. And it's like, it has? Okay. And that's where maybe an intermission in between, we get, the setup, the warlord dies. He's finally, he takes over the role. He's finally kind of through all the main hurdles of the mistresses and the grandson and the son and all of that. And then we jump to, 4 years later, the end of the ruse, but after the intermission, something something more clean cut.
Right. You know, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my memory is, having watched it now, there was a lack of the famous Kurosawa wipes, the ones that Lucas fell in love with for the Star Wars movies.
I don't think I saw any wipes.
Yeah. They're missing. Would that have helped, do you think, if he had hung on to that? Would that have helped with it?
A change of location or time.
Yeah,
or
I suddenly
something.
realized those wipes are very helpful with the idea of like it's a magician hand wave where you're like, okay, something extra has happened.
It's a visual beat.
Yeah, it's like a fade out, fade in without fading.
Right.
Would you think the film would have benefited from that?
Maybe at least if they had put them between the year jumps, like if when they jumped from 71 to 73 and then from 73 to 75, if those were the only times you had, because it's always the same kind of day, it's always the same kind of season, it's always the same kind of weather and day or night, like so I there was nothing really, and I can't look at these characters and be like they're older, so you're just taking the word for it where they say, oh, at the bottom of the screen 73. I'm like, okay, sure, this all could have taken place in 1 year. You could have squished it, and I don't think it would have changed the story at all. It was the 1 year that he had to try to hold up the farce.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, the thing is, it's frustrating for me because when it worked, it really worked for me. I really plugged into it, and I can honestly say I'm going to watch the 3-hour cut to see if it helps, because I think I might wind up a little more generous with this. But one of the things, so long as we're talking about character, you had already mentioned how the double, the actor who came in. Now, famously, Shintaro Katsu was originally cast in the title role, but Katsu left the production, according to Coppola, because he angered Kurosawa by arriving with his own camera crew to record Kurosawa's filmmaking. So, oops.
Wow.
Hey, director, I'm going to have my own camera crew filming you making the movie. I can understand why a director would have a problem with that.
I could totally. I'm just picturing it in a modern setting, like some like fancy actor rolling in, and his posse all have like iPhone rigs, like those big, motion rigs, and they're just filming, and the director being like, "What are you doing? Like, get off my lot."
But at the same time, you hear stories, legends about like Val Kilmer shoving Joel Schumacher on the set of Batman Forever because he got frustrated with him or something like that. So who knows different directors' level of zen with things. But he gets replaced by Tatsuya Nakadai. And I think both of us agree he does a great job in the role.
Great job in the role.
Were there any other standouts here? Like for me, I'll tell you a negative standout for me was there was the one general who always dressed in red, who was always really angry about everything.
That's why he's in red.
Yeah, I know. But like he was like, I wanted to give the guy like slip him a gummy and be like, hey, it's okay to take it down one notch, Chief. But like, were there any other standout roles here? Were there any other standout performances?
I kind of liked the two attendants who were always kind of with him and helping him kind of navigate. Like when he was introduced to the house staff, like I really liked that moment because they were all in on it, but they're also mourning their late master. And so I feel it kind of brought us a little bit back to early Kurosawa and Hidden Fortress and stuff like that with the view through the peasants. Because this whole movie is generals and up. Like really, like 90% of the movie is focused on the elite. And so when we had these moments with the house staff, I felt it really grounded the story because like there's a scene where they're all introduced and then they're crying. They're actively weeping for their master. So I like those roles. I would have liked a little more of that. Maybe a little more POV in between because it's an interesting story as so far as there's not, maybe I'm overstepping, but is there like a singular point of view in this movie?
It's one of the challenges is the story revolves around Kagemusha, the imposter.
Yeah.
But nobody seems to be the title character. And that was one of the things we praised about Yojimbo. It's very clear. This guy's the main character.
Super clear. He's in every shot.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. This is an ensemble cast, but not necessarily in a positive sense. I struggled. I remember thinking that specifically quickly. By about 2 hours in, I was like, whose story is this?
Right. Who's big on the poster?
But I wonder if, I mean, do you think that if we had better knowledge of Japanese history, because this is basically historical fiction, do you think that this resonates more with a Japanese audience because they know what the hell this movie is talking about? Like, for us, we might plug into a movie about the Revolutionary War because it's like, yeah, we grew up in America. We know what this is about, right? You can speak it shorthand to us. Do you think a similar sort of thing is happening here?
I think you're right. I was just kind of thinking of that comparison where if this was about all the generals that are around Washington and all of them, but we don't see Washington, he's kind of alluded to, and we don't really recognize these names from history, but we know enough about American history to know, oh, I recognize that battle name and I recognize that location, and your mind fills in all the blanks. But we don't have that for, I'm not up to speed on my 1570s there so far. But yeah, because even the son, who kind of could have taken a bit of the reins when he's finding out what's going on, but he's barely in the movie. He is so infrequently in a shot that, yeah, it's just, like you said, it's an ensemble piece, but not necessarily in the right way. I mean, think of other ensemble movies like Lord of the Rings. You can still, on an individual movie basis, see even when they're breaking the Fellowship or going in different directions, you know who's running each party. You're like, okay, this is Gandalf's track. This is Frodo's track. This is Aragorn's track. Like, that is very clear. That is not the case, at least in my viewing of this.
See, that's interesting because it's one of the things I struggle with in the cut that I watched. You struggle with it in the cut that you watched. So obviously the extra 20 minutes doesn't make a difference in those, in that sense, which is unfortunate to me. But, talking about that, we alluded to the fact that it co-won the Palme d'Or in 1980. This is a highly regarded film. And obviously we have our issues with it going along so far. My question is, sort of a role play sort of thing. When I love something and people don't, I try to understand what they didn't love about it. Like Megalopolis would be a great thing. Like my famous line about that is I either loved it so much that I hated it or I hated it so much that I loved it. I don't know where I stand with it, but I can't forget it, sort of thing. And so I try to put in my brain and I'm like, oh, I totally get why people hated it. Is this something where you, even if it didn't connect with you completely with all of the flaws that we've talked about, is this one where you can look at it and you go, oh, I get it. I know why critics loved this. I know why Pauline Kael of the New York Times raved about this. I know why this won the Palme d'Or. I know why the Hollywood Reporter ranked this as 10th among the 69 Palme d'Or winners. I know why this was, I think this was the #1 Japanese film on the domestic market in 1980. So basically this film has tons of praise, tons of awards, BAFTA awards. It has, Cannes Film Festival. It was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film in the Academy Awards and Best Art Direction. Do you see what the critics saw? Or is this one where you're sort of like, I don't know, guys. I'm just not connecting with it.
No, I do. I mean, it is a well-executed film. It's clear on its story as far as, where it's taking us. I love that it's in color, especially because of the use of color of all the different divisions. Like that whole ending sequence wouldn't have made any sense if it was like the bluish gray and then the darkish gray and then the lightish gray all go to their death. It just is not as impact. Like I love the motifs of his symbol, the 4 diamonds being, earth, sky, or was it water, fire,
earth,
mountain,
fire, water, mountain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not quite the fifth element, but I liked that. I felt that worked. But I feel that this is a little more of a product of its time, where you're in 1980, you're coming off of the late 70s. This is a Kurosawa film. It goes into all the right places. It's in color. All of these check boxes versus you could think of another movie like in the 70s, like a Western. In the age of Western, like when those movies came out, just the fact that it was a Western, it was great. And people raved about it. Or a musical, in the height of musicals. So I'm just saying, genre-wise, I think that helped it in its moment, because that was kind of the moment that genre was having. Whereas looking at it now, for me, I'm not giving it those extra brownie points for being in that genre right now, because that's not what is the main genre right now. So, but I do see, when we quibble over length or protagonist confusion or things like that, as core though, this is still, better than other things I've seen. It was still an interesting story. Like I said, I was engaged the entire time. I just wanted it to move a little faster.
So, we love to talk about music on our way past third, as it were. So I got to ask you, do you consider this a successful score?
Score is a big word for for this. I mean, the music's there, but it does not. I think we really peaked in score last week with Yojimbo, which, even though I wasn't as sold on it, you and Tristan were raving for like 10 minutes about the score. And this one, it's there. I could have used maybe more music from the period, would have been an interesting take. I felt like it was a fairly like the type of instruments used were more on the modern side, for something in the 1500s or 1600s. But yeah, so there was no, at least from my memory, there was no like motif of the general, like that always played when so-and-so came on screen.
Right.
There are things like that to tie you together. And when there's no motifs, not that every movie has to have motifs, but when there's no motif, then I look at the music to be an indicator of what I should feel in the moment. It's like, okay, should I feel excited for this or happy for this? And that was there, but the real feeling of motivation or emotion in the moments was from the acting. I mean, I think the greatest moment of that is when he's trying to convince them that he can impersonate the warlord and kind of pulls around the little table and kind of leans his arm on it. And like that motion, that part of that scene was the strongest scene of the whole movie. But it wasn't ratified by a score in that moment.
It's a good way to put that. I agree. I mean, the music's there, but like there were certain moments where I was like, this doesn't feel right for the period that it's discussing, and that's sort of where I struggled with it. But I mean, what do I know? It was beloved by critics and the Cannes Film Festival, so I'm just a simple moviegoer. Hey.
Well, but we've said before. I mean, again, nothing against film festivals, but any sort of award, you have to also contextualize what was it up against.
Oh, sure.
Because there could be, I mean, it's 1980. There's a lot of good movies out, but they're also, for what it's up against, especially if it's in a foreign language category, there could be less competition. I'm just stating that is part of award shows. Who you're against is definitely at least half the equation.
So here we are. We've both never seen it before. I say this is a good point to offer our ratings and reviews, or final thoughts, I should say. So I will go first. I will give you the pleasure of going last. For me, this is a film that I struggle with. I think that the first, I'd say 40 minutes, I was like, I kind of know what's going on. As I said about previous Kurosawa films, I feel like if I knew Japanese or Japanese history better, I would enjoy it more. I think that the subtitles in the version that I watched were garbage. There were actually 2 moments where I caught misspellings in the subtitles, and I said, oh, okay, they didn't care enough on this one. Okay. Which is another reason I want to watch the Criterion Collection, because I want to believe in my heart of hearts that Criterion paid more attention to the subtitles. So maybe there's something that I didn't get that even you did. All that said, there are moments that are absolutely magical in this. I think that once it unlocks that comfort level, and I think the dream sequence is one of those most comfortable levels of editing and filmmaking, where it's very obviously stage play, the way that it is, but that dream sequence is beautiful to watch. I think there are beautiful sequences here and there. There are great things, but it's not terribly cohesive. So I wind up coming in with a 3 on my first viewing. I think there's room to grow. I'm a weird one. I might watch the 20-minute longer, and I'm either going to go 2 stars or 4 stars stars with it. It's going to depend, maybe on my mood as well. So 3 stars for me. Where do you land with Kagemusha, the final film that we will be discussing here in the House of Kurosawa?
Yeah, I too really like the dream sequence, the kind of forced perspective of he's obviously on a stage, but it's meant to be a miniaturization of the land and the little hills as he walks over them. And I love the backdrop, like however they were lighting it, I don't even know, but it was almost kind of a self-lit, like a layer of neon or something was behind a painting, and it just glowed in this interesting way that wasn't projection. It was something else, but and slightly different frame rates and the way he moves, and I like the symmetry of him falling into the water, and then that's how he died, like falling into the river in the end. So yeah, that was once he breaks open that jar and it's like, oh, that's where they put the dead general. It's like, oh my gosh. But yeah, it is just one of those things where they did a lot of things right, where they invested a lot of time in all the generals, and they invested, like, they put all the pieces where they should, but it was still really long. Like, I think, and maybe that's just a modern sensibility looking at it, or modern film techniques, but I think it would have been interesting to, and maybe this is what happened, I'm just misremembering, but you have the 3 generals that are the 3 colors, and then there's like the lead general who's also kind of was his double for a little while, but wasn't, which also kind of confused things a little bit because he also kind of looked like him. Like, really focus on those guys. Like, I think those 4 should have been the only ones in council at any given time. No one else is in the room. Like, really hone it down. And then maybe that's not, that'd be like, oh, you wouldn't have a meeting of the U.S. generals with only 3 generals there. It's like, maybe you're right. And maybe for historical accuracy, it should have been there. But so overall, I enjoyed this story. I think, honestly, maybe watching it in a dub would have been easier to consume in a first bite, because I don't know about you, but this whole house it is an extra bit of effort, like watching a movie only in only with subtitles, because you have to be extremely focused the entire time to even know what is going on. Yep. And that is a struggle sometimes, especially on a 3-hour movie. So I'm going to give this 2 stars. I think it, especially now, a lot of Kurosawa for me has been in 4s and 5s. It's been a great time viewing and getting a slice of his filmography. There's more to discover. There's more out there. We covered only a fraction of it. And I don't see this as, oh, Kurosawa was diminishing as he hit the 80s. No, not in the slightest. But for me and my take, maybe I want to try to find a more modern subject that he covers versus period, because we've seen a lot. Everything's been period.
High and low. Again,
okay.
I say high and low. And of course, we don't have any official transmission from Tristan, but I think we're confident in saying that he gave this 5 stars. And so Tristan is the outlier on this one. He gave it 5 stars. He loved it. And I know Tristan very well. You know Tristan very well. I'd say 5 stars is a fair guess. And probably he especially loved the editing on this and felt that they probably could have gone for a whole other 20 or 40 minutes beyond the runtime, regardless of which cut that you watch, knowing Tristan as we do. But Darren, this closes out the House of Kurosawa. What lay in the future next week for us?
Well, we're going to go into an amazing house of Jonathan Lynn, or as we're calling it, a palate cleanser, to just enjoy something fun. We're going to cover a couple of his movies from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, starting with 1985's Clue, next on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.